Most people think a dog's voice is just a bark, a growl, or a whine. But on one unforgettable morning inside a crowded courtroom, a German shepherd proved that some messages travel far deeper than sound. The room was tense, lawyers pacing, cameras flashing, a frightened little girl sitting on the witness stand, clutching the leash of the only being she trusted, a police dog named Rex. When the judge tried to lighten the moment by jokingly commanding, "Speak," everyone expected a bark, maybe even a laugh. Instead, the dog did something no one could explain. He tapped his tail slowly, deliberately, rhythmically. At first, people smiled, thinking it was a quirky trick. But then, the little girl's face drained of color. She whispered a strange word, one no one understood. And the judge froze. Because the pattern of those taps, it wasn't random. It was a message. And it was only the beginning. What happened next would uncover a secret buried for decades, expose a betrayal at the highest level, and reveal a bond between a child and her dog so unbreakable it could speak through fire, trauma, and silence itself. The courtroom breathed in silence, that heavy, strained kind of silence that seems to tighten every breath. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, slanting across polished oak benches. Dust particles hung in the air like suspended tension. At the witness stand sat a little girl no older than 10. Her small hands trembled as she clutched the wooden edge, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. The lawyer's voice echoed, sharp, relentless, slicing through the quiet. "Tell the court what you saw that night," he demanded, his tone too clinical for someone so young. She didn't answer. Her gaze flicked to the floor, then to the German shepherd sitting by her chair. Rex, the police dog assigned to protect her. His amber eyes never left her face. He sat perfectly still, posture straight, but his tail shifted once, brushing her shoe as if to say, "It's okay. I'm here." The judge, an older man with tired eyes and deep creases etched by years of difficult truths, noticed. He exhaled slowly, the weight of the trial pressing on him like old stone. The room had been on edge since morning. A high-profile corruption case, a dead officer, a frightened child witness who hadn't spoken a word since that night. He leaned forward, his voice a low rumble cutting through the tension. "Counselor, that's enough for now." The lawyer frowned, stepping back reluctantly. The judge turned to the girl, softening his tone. "Sweetheart, you're safe here. No one's going to hurt you." Still, no response. Only the faint creak of wooden benches as spectators shifted uncomfortably. The judge's eyes drifted to the German shepherd. He remembered hearing about this one, trained under her father, a decorated police officer. The papers had called Rex the most reliable K9 in the home precinct. The irony wasn't lost on him. The most reliable soul in the room sat silent beside a child who could not speak. Trying to ease the tension, he forced a small smile. "Well then, maybe we should hear from someone who can talk." A faint ripple of nervous laughter moved through the courtroom. The judge turned toward the dog and gently gave the command every K9 handler knows by heart. "Speak." For a moment, nothing. Then, something entirely unexpected. The girl's head snapped up, eyes wide with shock and recognition. She whispered a single word, strange, unfamiliar to anyone else. "Larkspur." The judge blinked. What was that? Before anyone could react, Rex's tail began to move, not wagging, not random, but tapping the floor in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap, tap. The cadence echoed, each tap louder than the last. The bailiff frowned. Is he doing that on purpose? The defense attorney smirked. It's a dog, Your Honor. Maybe he's bored. But the girl, she was crying now. Quietly. Silently. Her shoulders shaking as Rex kept tapping. Calm, steady, focused. The judge raised a hand, silencing the room. Something about the rhythm tugged at him. Something familiar. His late brother had once been a radio operator in the Navy. As a boy, he learned bits of Morse code just to send secret messages. Now, as the pattern repeated, tap, 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 pause, tap, 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 realization crept over him like a slow tide. This wasn't random. This was code. He leaned forward, every muscle tight. Bailiff, don't interrupt him. The room froze. The only sound, the tail of a German shepherd, tapping justice into the wood. The girl lifted her tearful eyes. She didn't speak, but her gaze pleaded with him to understand. And somehow, he did. He grabbed a notepad and scribbled down the sequence. Dots and dashes, rough, clumsy, whispering each letter as memory returned. B, O, O. His pen slowed. K. His voice cracked. Book? The girl nodded, fiercely. The judge rose, robe swaying with his steps, and crossed the courtroom to the old shelves lined with forgotten legal volumes. His fingers traced along dusty spines. Brown vase board, Federal Ethics, Law of Evidence, 1954. Until he stopped at an unmarked book, wedged deep in the corner. He pulled it free. The book creaked open. Inside the hollowed cover, taped with yellowing paper, lay a small iron key. Gasps rippled through the room. The judge turned, key in hand. The girl wasn't trembling anymore. Rex sat beside her, tail still now, watching her with quiet, unshakable pride. The old man's voice broke the silence. What did you just do, sweetheart? She didn't speak aloud, but her lips formed the words he could read as clearly as if she'd shouted. He taught me to trust the dog. His grip tightened around the key. His heartbeat thundered, not from fear, but from awe. In all his years on the bench, he had seen men lie, laws twist, justice bend. But never, never had he seen truth spoken so loudly without a single word. The moment held like a photograph. The judge with the key, the girl staring through her tears, and the dog whose silence spoke louder than any testimony. Outside, wind rattled the courthouse windows. Inside, the echo of those tail taps lingered. Steady, rhythmic, eternal. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. The sound of truth trying to be heard. The courtroom had not yet exhaled. Even after the gasps faded, even after whispers were shushed, and the judge returned to his seat, there remained a thick, motionless weight in the air, the kind that appears only when truth brushes against the edges of the unexplainable. The girl sat frozen, her small shoulders trembling beneath the oversized cardigan someone had draped around her earlier. Rex remained close beside her, posture alert but calm. his amber eyes shifting between her face and the judge as if waiting for the next cue in a conversation only he and the child understood. And the judge, he cleared his throat, though nothing obstructed it. Just nerves, just disbelief, just the kind of revelation that takes a lifetime of law and breaks it open with a dog's tail tapping on wood. "Court will recess," he finally murmured, voice unsteady, but no one moved. The bailiff had to repeat the words louder, guiding people out with gentle hands. The defense attorney left reluctantly, huffing as though the entire incident had been nothing but theatrics. The prosecutor walked out slowly, brows furrowed in thought. Reporters scribbled notes but kept glancing back, sensing a story far bigger than a simple witness statement. Soon the room emptied, all except the judge, the girl, and Rex. When the heavy doors shut, the silence that followed felt different from the one before. This one pulsed, with secrets. The judge rose from his chair slowly, his knees cracked under his robe, a reminder of age, of time, of countless days spent listening to partial truths and polished lies. But today, something felt different. He stepped off the bench and moved toward the girl. Rex shifted but did not move, tail still, eyes steady. The judge pulled a small wooden chair closer, sitting across from her, close enough that his voice didn't need to carry far. He placed the key gently on the table between them. "Sweetheart," he said, softer than he'd spoken all day, "I need you to show me exactly what happened." She didn't look at him at first. She traced the grain of the table with her fingertip, breaths uneven. Her other hand stayed, clenched around something. A locket. A bracelet. It didn't matter. Children in trauma often held on to something they believed could keep them whole. He waited patiently. Silence didn't frighten him. It merely gave truth room to breathe. Finally, she looked up, eyes shimmering with a question she couldn't speak. The judge understood. He reached for his notepad again. "It's all right," he told her. "If you can't talk, let him talk." Rex's ears perked. The girl swallowed, wiped her cheeks, and reached out, not to the judge, but to Rex. She placed her tiny hand on the dog's head. Rex bowed slightly, as if receiving a sacred duty. The judge watched closely. The girl touched her fingertips to Rex's collar. Then, with trembling hesitancy, she tapped twice on the metal tag. Rex's tail twitched. Her eyes flicked toward the judge, asking for permission. He nodded, and Rex began. Tap, 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 pause. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, pause. Tap, tap. The judge scribbled each rhythm, converting them into dots and dashes. He muttered under his breath, old muscle memory returning. Every word the dog signaled made the girl tense. She knew what Rex was saying. She knew what the judge would soon discover. When the sequence ended, Rex exhaled softly, lowering his head to the floor. The judge stared at the page. The letters formed a word, the same one as before. Book. His pulse raced. He crossed the courtroom toward the old legal library. Shelves unused in years. Books lined up in dusty dignity. But then, he saw it. The gap. A faint outline where dust stopped and cleaner wood began. Something had been moved. recently or often. He reached out and pulled the unmarked book from the shelf. It felt too heavy. He opened it. Inside, hollowed pages framing a secret compartment, paper meticulously cut. Nothing accidental, nothing convenient. Timbu o 700s. Taped to the cardboard base was a key. Another key. A gasp echoed from the doorway. Staff members peeked in, drawn by the judge's sharp intake of breath. "What is that?" one clerk whispered. The judge didn't answer. Couldn't. He just stared at the key. Possibilities blooming like dark flowers. He returned to the girl, holding the key between his fingers. Her eyes widened. Not with confusion, but recognition. His voice trembled. "What did you just do, sweetheart?" Her lips parted. She couldn't speak. But the message was clear. He taught me to trust the dog. The judge swallowed hard. Rex placed one paw on the girl's foot. She leaned into him, gripping his fur as though the world might drift away. A child who could not speak. A dog who would not bark. A language shared in Morse code. A hidden key. A truth waiting in the shadows. "Did your father teach you the code?" he asked. She nodded. "And Rex learned it too?" Another nod. "Why?" His voice cracked with heartbreak. She tapped lightly against her locket. Rex tapped the floor in answer. This wasn't coincidence. This was a message planted long before today. The bailiff stepped inside. "Judge, the press is gathering." The judge closed his hand around the keys, as if protecting them from the world. "It's all right," he said softly. "The truth has been waiting long enough." He looked at the girl and, "We'll find out what these open." Rex sat straight-backed, tail still. The posture of a soldier who understood what came next. The judge stood tall, robe trailing behind him. The girl buried her face in Rex's fur, and in the quiet that followed, a sound echoed softly. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. The sound of a story, only just beginning. The world was different then. Sunlight spilled across the Moore family's backyard, painting everything in gold. The grass shimmered with dew, the scent of wet earth mixing with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee drifting from the porch. Laughter, the kind that came easily and often, rippled through the air. Emily, no more than 8, ran barefoot through the yard chasing a bouncing red ball. Her giggles danced on the breeze. Behind her, the German shepherd, Rex, bounded with perfect grace, his fur catching the morning light like polished bronze. "Rex, sit!" she squealed, bright and confident. Rex skidded to a stop, tail wagging. He sat instantly, eyes locked on her face, waiting for her next command. From the porch, her father watched, leaning against the wooden rail, wearing a smile that carried pride and peace, 2 things rare in his line of work. Officer Daniel Moore had seen too much: lies, corruption, violence. But here, in this pocket of sunlight, he was simply a father, just Dad. "Good," he called. "Remember, Em, it's not about shouting. It's about trust." She turned, hair tangled by the wind. "But he only listens when I tell him loud, Daddy." Daniel chuckled, walking toward her. "Not this one. Rex listens to your heart before he listens to your mouth." He knelt beside her, taking her small hand in his calloused one. He tapped gently on her palm. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap. She blinked. What's that? Morse code, he said. Secret talking. Words without words. She giggled. That's silly. He grinned. Maybe, but if you're ever scared or hiding and you can't speak, you can use this. Someone who knows how to listen will understand. He tapped again, slower. That means Dad. Rex's ears perked, head tilting. Emily tapped the ground beside his paw. Rex barked once, sharp and clear, then sat still. Daniel laughed. Smarter than half the rookies at the station. Over the next weeks, their game grew. Each afternoon, Daniel came home, rolled up his sleeves, and sat with them in the grass. Dot, 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 he'd say. That's S dash dash dash. That's O. Together, SOS. You remember that one? Emily copied him, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth. Rex tilted his head, studying the strange ritual. Until one day, something remarkable happened. Daniel tapped Good Dog on the ground with a stick. Rex's tail began to thump. Precise, deliberate, rhythmic. Daniel froze. Did you see that? Emily gasped. Daddy, he's doing it. Daniel's grin spread slow. Well, I'll be damned. From that day on, Morse code wasn't a game. It was their language, a bridge between man, child, and dog. Tap, pause, tap, tap meant love. Tap, 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 long pause, tap meant stay. And when Emily giggled too hard to breathe, Rex tapped once, their signal for laugh together. Those afternoons were sacred. Sun melting behind the trees, faces painted in amber, his wife calling, "Dinner's ready," and Daniel replying, 2 minutes, knowing it would be 20. The world felt small and safe. But shadows from Daniel's work always found a way in. Some evenings his radio crackled mid-game. His face tightened. He slipped inside to take a call. Emily watched through the window, worry flickering. One night, after a call that left him pale, she crept to his side. "Daddy, are you sad?" He forced a smile. "Just tired, pumpkin." "From the bad people?" His hand stilled, then rested on her hair. "Yeah, from the bad people." She pressed into him. "They can't hurt us, right? 'Cause Rex will protect me." Daniel nodded, jaw tightening. "That's right. And you'll protect him, too. Damn mein Franz." He leaned closer. "If you ever can't speak, Em, he will." "Rex?" she whispered. "Yes. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than words." She didn't understand, not yet, but nodded anyway. Fireflies flickered in the yard. Daniel tapped once on the porch step. Rex answered with a slow, rhythmic beat. Emily laughed. "He said good night." Daniel chuckled. "Then tell him sweet dreams." She leaned close to Rex's ear. "Sweet dreams, partner." Rex's tail thumped twice. Years later, those taps would return, in a courtroom where silence carried meaning again. But for now, there was only summer's warmth, the creak of the porch swing, and the soft hum of a family at peace. As dusk faded, Daniel rose. "All right, troops," he said with mock authority. "Time to hit the showers." Emily saluted. "Yes, sir." He ruffled her hair. "That's my girl." Rex barked once, proud and content. As father and daughter headed inside, the shepherd lingered in the doorway, watching the yard, ears twitching to the rhythm of the night, as if already listening for echoes of the future. The night began like any other, quiet, ordinary, too peaceful to suspect it would be their last together. The wind was still. The house breathed in the rhythm of sleep. Emily's room glowed softly beneath her nightlight. Stars painted gently across the ceiling. Rex slept by her bedside, one paw twitching in dreams, his chest rising in steady calm. Down the hall, the faint sound of rustling papers drifted from her father's office. Officer Daniel Moore never slept early. He sat hunched over a desk buried in folders, case files, photographs. The lamp's amber glow carved hard shadows across his face. He reached for his wristwatch, tapping it lightly. On the metal band, scratched in faint, uneven lines, were small Morse codes, his shorthand for secrets, messages only he could read. He exhaled, voice low and heavy. If anything happens, they'll know. Outside, the night held its breath. Then came the smell, faint at first, drifting like memory. Smoke. Daniel looked up sharply. The lamp flickered. A soft crackling whispered from the corner of the room. He turned and froze. A thread of flame licked the edge of a file on the floor. He grabbed his water glass, dousing it. But the fire hissed and spread, crawling up the curtains like a living thing. In seconds, it leapt from file to file, each one bursting into sparks. "Emily!" he shouted, tearing the night open. Rex jerked awake, instincts firing. He lunged toward the door, claws scraping the floorboards. Emily woke to chaos, shattering glass, her father's voice the roar of something devouring their home. The air thickened, hot, heavy. "Daddy," she whispered, coughing. Through the haze, she saw a shadow, her father's silhouette framed by flames. "Stay there, sweetheart, don't move." He vanished back into the inferno, yanking open a drawer, shoving files into a bag. The ceiling groaned, wood surrendering. A beam cracked loose, crashing down in a storm of embers. Fire exploded outward. "Daddy!" Rex burst through the smoke, reaching her first. His teeth gripped her sleeve gently, pulling her downward. He barked, once, sharp, commanding. "Down!" The same command Daniel had taught him years ago. Emily dropped to her knees, trembling. Daniel stumbled from the office, coughing violently, one arm shielding his face. His uniform was half burned, his hands blackened with soot. "Rex, take her out!" The dog obeyed instantly, muscles straining, eyes burning with purpose. He dragged Emily toward the front door. "Daddy!" she screamed. Daniel met her eyes, just for a second. Through the wall of heat, their gazes locked. He smiled, the kind of smile that breaks and heals all at once. "I love you, pumpkin," he mouthed silently. And then, the hallway collapsed. The sound was deafening. Flames swallowed everything. Rex howled, a raw, primal sound cutting through the inferno. He pulled harder, dragging Emily across the floor, out into the cold night. The front door gave way with a violent crash. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, red and blue lights flickering against the clouds. Rex hauled Emily onto the wet grass, nudging her chest with his paw. She coughed, once, twice, fighting her way back to air. Her eyes opened weakly. "Daddy!" Rex pressed his paw against her chest, gentle, steady, keeping her down, keeping her safe. He looked back at the house, flames tearing through windows, roof caving inward. Somewhere inside, Daniel's wristwatch ticked once, twice, before the ceiling fell. Emily tried to rise, but Rex blocked her gently. He howled, long, mournful, a call to the world to witness. When firefighters arrived, they found Emily unconscious beneath Rex's protection. He refused to move, growling when they reached for her, until the paramedics lifted her carefully. Only then did he follow, limping, tail low, eyes fixed on the ambulance carrying her father's world away. Hours passed before dawn. The house was gone. The fire chief's report would claim electrical malfunction, though the burn patterns whispered otherwise, too precise, too deliberate. But truth was buried beneath grief. At the hospital, Emily awoke to the sterile hum of machines. Her throat burned, her voice gone. Not from smoke, but from trauma. Every time she tried to speak, silence. Rex lay at the foot of her bed, wrapped in bandages. His tail tapped faintly, once every few seconds, a slow, soothing rhythm. Her eyes drifted to her father's wristwatch on the bedside table, recovered from the ashes. The metal scorched, but the faint scratches remained, dots and dashes, the message he carved into time. She traced them with her fingertip, tears spilling silently. A nurse whispered, "She hasn't spoken." The doctor sighed, "Give her time." But Emily didn't need time. She had made a promise. That night, she placed her small hand on Rex's fur. He lifted his head, ears perking, and tapped his tail once. A gentle, "I'm here." Her lips shaped silent words. "He will." Rex lowered his head, eyes closing, as if in agreement. Years later, that same girl would stand in a courtroom clutching that same watch, the scratches gleaming faintly, the final message from a father who trusted silence to carry his truth. Morning came gray and silent, the kind of morning that feels like the world is holding its breath. The courthouse, usually buzzing with noise, was still. Empty corridors echoed only the soft tap of shoes and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Judge Harold Whitman moved through the hall like a man carrying a secret too heavy for daylight. In his pocket, the iron key pressed against his palm, its shape etched into his skin like a memory refusing to fade. He had barely slept. All night his mind replayed the dog's rhythmic tail taps, the girl's tear-filled eyes, the word book. And the moment everything changed. He'd seen corruption before, whispers, cover-ups, bribes, but never had truth reached him through such pure, impossible means. Now that truth had weight, a physical form, a key marked 47. He descended to the lower floor, where half-century-old records gathered dust in locked rooms. The air smelled of old paper and rusted metal, a place where forgotten truths went to die. He flicked on the light. It buzzed weakly, flickering across rows of metal cabinets. At the far end, an old safe bolted into concrete, paint faded, numbers barely visible. He stopped in front of it, the chill of the room pressing against his skin. The key trembled slightly in his hand. For a long moment, he simply stared. He knew what he was about to do might cost him everything. His position, his reputation, his safety. Judges uphold the law, not dig up the graves it tries to bury, but something deeper tugged at him, something older than duty. Justice. He slid the key into the lock. Click, click, clunk. The door creaked open, releasing a breath of stale air. Inside were folders stacked neatly, untouched for years. Dust coated every edge. On the top shelf lay an envelope stamped in red. Pitch worst. Case 47. Suppressed. His hands shook as he lifted it. Papers yellowed with age. Reports, statements, seals. Then, a name. Officer Daniel Moore. Internal Affairs Division. Evidence containment breach. His throat dried. He pulled out a small flash drive. Label faded, but still legible. Moore, 47. Truth. The breath left his lungs. He leaned against the cold wall, eyes closing. It wasn't coincidence. It had never been coincidence. Someone hid this, deliberately, methodically, long before the fire, long before the little girl's silence. And somehow, through a chain of impossible events, it found its way back to him. He noticed a handwritten note beneath the official seal. This evidence is not to be released without direct authorization from Captain Briggs. The name hit him like a punch. Briggs. The same man now running the department. The same man who sat in the courtroom yesterday, stone-faced, claiming the child's testimony irrelevant. The realization burned cold. Whitman's heart pounded. He sank into an old wooden chair, staring at the folder. The ticking clock echoed off the walls, steady, unrelenting, time demanding a decision. He opened the folder again and read. Surveillance photos, witness statements, forensic reports, all pointing to an evidence-tampering ring from 20 years prior. Officers had destroyed proof linking high-ranking officials to a criminal network, and Officer Daniel Moore, the girl's father, had uncovered it. He tried to expose it, and for that, he had been silenced. Good God, Whitman whispered. He read the final memo. Short, unsigned. Moore's investigation must be contained. Files reassigned. Evidence archived. B. It didn't need a full name. He closed the folder, staring at the floor as the air thickened. He thought of the girl, her silence, her eyes, the Morse code on the watchband. Thought of the dog's loyalty, the way it risked everything to lead them here. And he thought of his oath, to uphold justice without fear or favor. Words he'd spoken when his robe was crisp and his faith still whole. Now, that faith roared back to life. He stood abruptly, clutching the folder. Dust scattered in the air like ash. Not anymore. Not this time. He turned toward the door, but a shadow moved in the hallway beyond. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. He froze. Then, a voice, calm, controlled, too familiar. Working early, Harold? Captain Briggs stood in the doorway, uniform immaculate, smile polite, and cold. His eyes drifted to the folder in Whitman's hand. Interesting place for a man of your rank to be poking around. Those files haven't seen daylight in decades. Whitman met his gaze. Maybe they should. The smile faded. Careful, Judge. Some things are buried for a reason. Whitman's voice hardened. You buried a man's life. A father's truth. Briggs's tone sharpened. Open that case and you'll destroy more than your career. Think carefully before you play hero. The air thickened like storm clouds gathering. Whitman didn't flinch. Justice doesn't need heroes, he said quietly. Just men who still have the courage to listen. Briggs's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. After a long pause, he turned and walked away, footsteps fading down the corridor. Whitman stood alone again, heart pounding, the folder pressed tight against his chest. For a long moment, he listened. To the silence, to the echoes of the dog's tail, to the faint pulse of conviction awakening. Then, without hesitation, he turned and climbed the stairs. Tomorrow, the court would open, and so would Case 47. Whatever the cost. The rain had started just before dawn. It clung to the courthouse windows like tears refusing to fall. Inside, the building was silent, hallways half-lit, heavy with anticipation. Judge Harold Whitman stood alone in his chambers, staring at the open file on his desk, the one marked Case 47. Pages littered the surface, edges curling with age, ink faded, but the truth sharp as ever. Missing reports, falsified signatures, deleted files. All pointing to one conclusion. Daniel Moore had uncovered something dangerous, and someone in power had buried it. Buried him. Whitman rubbed his temples, exhaustion pulling at his bones. Reopening this case would ignite chaos. But silence. Silence was worse. He looked toward the courtroom doors, where the girl waited. Rex at her feet. She clutched the watch in her small hand, thumb tracing its Morse scratches. Rex's ears flicked every few seconds, tuned to something no one else could hear. Then, the door burst open. Captain Briggs stormed in, rain damp on his uniform, anger carved into every line of his face. "Harold, we need to talk." Whitman didn't look up. We're long past talking." Briggs slammed his gloved hand onto the desk. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "Doing my job," Whitman replied evenly. "Your job," Briggs spat, "is to uphold order, not drag ghosts out of their graves." Whitman finally looked at him, eyes calm, but burning underneath. "And your job was to protect the innocent. You buried a man who tried to tell the truth." Briggs's face hardened. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Whitman held up the folder. "Case 47. Evidence suppressed under your command. Officer Daniel Moore, your subordinate. He uncovered corruption in your department, didn't he?" Briggs said nothing. Rain dripped from his coat, pooling on the marble floor. Finally, he sighed, anger shifting into resignation. He sat down across from Whitman. "You were always too idealistic. You think justice is a clean word. It isn't. It's messy, political, dangerous." Whitman's voice tightened. "That man died because he believed justice was worth fighting for." Briggs looked away. "He died because he didn't understand how deep it went." The clock ticked loudly, filling the silence. Briggs leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Keep that case closed, Harold, or you'll lose everything. Your position, your pension, your credibility. Hell, you'll lose the people you're trying to protect." Whitman's eyes shifted toward the girl. She sat frozen, clutching Rex's fur. The dog's muscles tensed, eyes locked on the captain. The judge rose slowly. "If you're threatening me, you're already guilty." Briggs rose too, shadow falling across the desk. "You're one man against a wall built from decades of power. Reopen that case. They'll bury you too." Rex growled, low, steady, the air vibrating with warning. Briggs snapped. "Call him off." Whitman didn't move. He felt something shift in the room, something primal. Rex's tail began to move, slow, rhythmic. Tap, 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 pause. Whitman's breath caught. He knew that rhythm. The dog tapped again, controlled, precise. A message. Tap, 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 pause, tap, 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 Morse again. Whitman mouthed the letters silently. R-U-N. His eyes widened. Run. Before he could react, the girl pointed, hand trembling, toward Briggs's boots. Everyone turned. On the polished leather, faint but unmistakable, was a pattern. The same tread mark from the crime scene photo of her father's burned home. The same pattern she'd seen in nightmares for years. Whitman froze. Air vanished from the room. Briggs followed their gaze. For a brief second, guilt flickered. A shadow too quick to hide. "You don't know what you think you know," he whispered. The girl shook her head violently, tears spilling over. She pointed again, a silent scream. Rex snarled, teeth bared, body shielding her. "Enough!" Briggs barked, stepping back. "Let it go!" Whitman's voice dropped, low, trembling, iron beneath the calm. "You killed a man who tried to clean your department. And now you want to kill the truth." Briggs's face darkened. "Watch your words, Judge. I've watched too many lies. It's your turn." Silence stretched, heavy, glass thin. Then, Rex's tail tapped once. Briggs's hand twitched toward his holster. Whitman stepped forward, placing himself between the captain and the child. "You won't touch them." Rex's growl deepened. Not threat, but promise. Outside, thunder cracked, shaking the courthouse walls. Briggs backed away slowly, voice cold. "You're making a mistake, Harold. One you can't undo." Whitman held his ground. "Truth doesn't need undoing." Briggs stormed out, door slamming behind him like a gunshot. Whitman stood shaking, heart pounding. He turned to the girl. She cried silently. Rex pressed against her chest, her hand gripping the old watch like a lifeline. Whitman knelt beside her. "It's all right," he whispered. "It's over." But deep down, he knew it wasn't. Not yet. Outside, the storm raged, lightning slicing the sky. For a moment, the courthouse blazed white. In that flash, Whitman saw it clearly. This wasn't a battle of law anymore. It was a battle for truth itself. And tomorrow, when the world returned to order, he would break it open. The courthouse was never meant to feel like a battlefield. Its marble floors, polished by decades of footsteps, usually carried the weight of routine. Lawyers hurrying with files, officers escorting witnesses, clerks balancing stacks of paperwork. But this morning, the air felt different. Sharp, electric, trembling with something dangerous and inevitable. Judge Harold Whitman tightened his grip on the warrant in his hand. The ink was still drying. The warrant that no one was supposed to sign. The warrant carrying one name, Captain William Briggs. His betrayal was no longer rumor, no longer suspicion. It was truth, sealed in Case 47, etched into the tread of his boots, written in the silent terror of a child. Whitman stepped into the corridor. Officers gathered in clusters, whispering, watching, waiting. Some looked at him with respect, others with fear, and a few with something darker. Rex walked beside Emily, his pace low and deliberate, ears pointed forward, body a shield between her and every approaching figure. Emily held his collar with one trembling hand and her father's watch in the other. They turned the corner, and Whitman saw him. Captain Briggs, standing at the end of the hall, flanked by officers, too calm, the calm of a man cornered, calculating, dangerous. "Harold," Briggs said, his voice steady, "put that paper down." Whitman kept walking. "This warrant is legal, and you know it. The department didn't authorize it. The law did." Briggs's smile thinned. "The law bends, Harold. You know that." Behind Whitman, officers shifted. Two stepped forward, then froze, torn between loyalties. Whitman raised the warrant. "William Briggs, you're under arrest for evidence suppression, obstruction of justice, and Enough!" Briggs's hand moved, too fast, not to surrender, but toward his holster. Rex lunged before anyone else could breathe. "Get down!" an officer shouted. Emily froze, eyes wide, rooted to the floor. Everything exploded at once. Shouts, footsteps, metal scraping. Briggs twisted free, fury ripping through every motion, and fired. Not at Whitman, not at the officers, but at the little girl. Emily gasped, too shocked to scream. And Rex moved. Not with hesitation, not with fear, but with purpose. A leap, powerful, fierce, desperate. A blur of fur and muscle crossing the distance faster than the bullet. Bang! Rex slammed into Emily, knocking her to the floor just as the shot tore into him instead. His body jerked, his paws scraped the tile. Then he collapsed across her, shielding her with everything he had. Whitman's voice cracked. "No!" Officers swarmed Briggs, dragging him down as he screamed. "She wasn't supposed to talk. She wasn't supposed to." But Whitman didn't hear him. He was already kneeling in the blood spreading beneath Rex. Not much blood. Not dramatic. But enough to shatter them. Emily crawled free, hands trembling so hard she could barely touch his fur. "Rex, Rex." His eyes fluttered, warm, gentle, even now. Whitman placed a shaking hand along Rex's side. "Easy, easy, boy." The hallway, moments ago a battleground, became a sanctuary of sorrow. Rex tried to lift his head, couldn't. But his tail, it moved. Tap, tap, tap. Times 600 mamstoso. Pause. Tap. Whitman sucked in a breath. "No. No, son. Save your strength." But the rhythm continued. Faint, deliberate, determined. Emily pressed her hands to her mouth, tears falling in silent streams. She whispered, broken, trembling, He means we're safe." Whitman closed his eyes, tears spilling despite every instinct to remain composed. "You've done enough, son," he whispered. "More than any of us deserved." Rex's breaths grew slower, softer, shallower. Emily lowered her forehead to his, sobbing now in ragged, broken whispers. "Please, don't go. Rex, please." His final tail tap was barely a whisper. One last beat. Then stillness. Emily clung to him, trembling, crying into the fur of the dog who had saved her life. The courthouse corridor stood in absolute silence, not because justice was served, but because a hero had fallen. A dog who spoke in silence had given his last word, and that word had saved a child. The sky outside the courthouse had faded into the color of cold steel. Heavy clouds pressed low, dragging the world into a gray hush, as if even the weather understood something sacred had been lost. Inside, the corridors still carried the smell of discharged weapons, of sweat from panic, of the metallic tang of fear that had stormed through moments earlier. Officers moved slowly, voices no louder than whispers, each one weighed down by a heaviness they couldn't shake. At the far end of the hallway, behind reinforced glass, Captain William Briggs sat cuffed to a metal chair. His uniform, once pristine, now wrinkled and defeated. His hair stuck to his forehead, and for the first time since Whitman had known him, his hands trembled. Two internal affairs officers stood across from him. A recorder blinked red, a small, unblinking eye absorbing every truth he could no longer hide. Whitman entered without ceremony, his robe gone, a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled. Exhaustion marked his face, and sorrow. He still wore a smear of dried blood near his cuff. Rex's blood. He hadn't washed it away. He couldn't. It was the last tangible mark of the dog who had saved them all. Emily walked beside him, her steps shaky, her eyes red from hours of crying. In her small palm she held Rex's service tag. Her thumb traced the engraving over and over. The soft metallic click echoed like a heartbeat in the silent room. Briggs lifted his head at the sound. His eyes flicked to the child, then quickly away. Guilt is something even the cruelest men can't hide. Whitman sat across from him, said nothing. He didn't need to. Briggs swallowed hard. "I want a lawyer." Whitman nodded. "You'll have one. But right now, you're going to tell the truth." Briggs let out a brittle scoff. "Truth? Truth died years ago in this department." Whitman's eyes hardened. "No. Truth survived. In a little girl who couldn't speak, and in the dog who died to protect her." Silence, heavy as stone, settled over the room. An IA officer spoke. "Captain Briggs, you've been implicated in destroying evidence, suppressing cases, and obstructing the investigation into Officer Daniel Moore's death." Briggs exhaled, a long, broken breath. "Cooperate," he muttered. "You think truth makes a difference now?" Emily stepped closer. Her small shadow stretched across the table. She set her father's badge gently on the metal surface. A soft tap. Small, but devastating. Briggs stared at it, at the symbol of the man he betrayed. Something cracked inside him. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. "Everything," Whitman said softly. And Briggs broke. Moore found the ledgers, the emails, the payments, a bribery ring. Officers paid to bury cases. He swallowed hard. "I was told to silence him, not kill him, just discredit him, push him out." Whitman leaned forward, but he didn't back down. "No," Briggs whispered. "He was a good man, too good." Emily trembled. Whitman's hand steadied her shoulder. "What happened the night of the fire?" Briggs closed his eyes. "I didn't set it, but I was there." Emily stiffened. "I saw the flames, and I walked away." The room froze. "You let him die," Whitman said quietly. Briggs's voice cracked. I thought he got out. I didn't know the girl was inside. Emily's tears flowed silently. Briggs whispered, I buried everything. Case 47, all of it. Because I was afraid. Because once you make one compromise, the rest follow. IA stepped forward. Captain William Briggs, you are— Not yet, Whitman said. He guided Emily forward. She placed Rex's service tag beside her father's badge. 2 symbols, 2 heroes, side by side. Briggs stared at them. The dog he shot. The man he betrayed. Something shattered. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Emily lifted her head. For the first time since the fire, she spoke. Her voice was small, cracked, fragile. Why didn't you save him? Briggs's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Emily's tears fell harder. He saved me. Why didn't you save him? Briggs broke into sobs, not from sadness, but the crushing weight of unforgivable truth. Whitman touched Emily's shoulder. Come, sweetheart. You've done enough. She looked one last time at the 2 tags lying together. The life she lost. The soul who protected her. Reunited. They walked out. Officers stood silently, heads bowed. Not out of pity, but out of respect. The courtroom felt different now. No longer a place of fear, but a place where truth, buried under ash and silence, finally rose again. Whitman guided Emily to the bench. He lifted Rex's tag, then her father's badge. This dog, he said softly, gave his life to protect innocence. This man gave his life to protect truth. Emily placed both tags together at the center of the bench. A beginning, a closure, a reunion, a promise sealed not by law, but by love. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks since the gunshot that shattered the echoes of the courthouse. 3 weeks since the dog who spoke without words gave his life to protect the only innocence left in a world bent by shadows. 3 weeks since the truth, long buried, clawed its way back to daylight. The world outside moved on in its usual rhythm, traffic humming, newspapers shifting to new headlines, the city's pulse unfazed. But inside the courthouse, time had moved differently, slower, heavier, as if walking through the grief of everyone who had passed through its halls. Now the day had come. The final hearing, the closing words that would mark the end of Case 47 and everything it had taken and restored. Judge Harold Whitman stood in his chambers, staring at the mirror. The lines on his face seemed deeper. His eyes carried a weight no robe could hide. But behind them, something else had emerged. Clarity. Resolve. A fire that had been dying for years and had now been reignited by a dog's loyalty and a child's silent courage. He adjusted his collar, exhaled, and walked out into the courtroom. The room was already packed. Every bench filled. Reporters lined the back wall. Officers from across the city stood shoulder to shoulder, some with badges pinned to their chests, others holding their hats respectfully at their sillons. But no one made a sound. The silence wasn't heavy. It was reverent. Emily sat in the front row, wearing a simple white dress. Her hair had grown a little in the past few weeks, and someone had braided it neatly for her. She held her father's police badge in her hands, rubbing her thumb over the scratched metal. Beside her on the witness stand, resting alone on a folded navy cloth, was Rex's collar, polished clean, tag shining softly under the courtroom lights. The collar looked impossibly small without the dog who once wore it. Emily stared at it, her small shoulders rising with a deep, steady breath, a breath that felt like it belonged to someone older, someone who had lived through fire and fear, and come out the other side stronger, even if the scars were still new. When Judge Whitman entered, every person in the room rose to their feet. Emily stood too, gripping the badge tighter. Whitman's gaze swept across them all, and when his eyes found Emily, something inside him steadied. He took his seat. The gavel touched the wooden block. A soft, controlled strike. Court is now in session. The murmur of shifting bodies faded. The air tightened with anticipation. Whitman adjusted his glasses, his voice carrying through the chamber with calm authority. In the matter of Case 47, he began, the court has reviewed evidence previously hidden, testimonies suppressed, and the actions of individuals sworn to uphold the law, but who instead undermined it. Briggs sat at the defense table, shackled, face hollow. He made no attempt to hide. He had confessed everything. His fate was already sealed. Whitman continued, voice firm but never harsh. This court acknowledges the bravery of those who refuse to let the truth remain buried. His eyes drifted toward Emily, and those whose voices spoke without a single word. Emily lowered her gaze, a soft breath trembling through her chest. Whitman paused, letting the silence settle like dust before continuing. Before I issue sentencing, I want the record to reflect something that is not found in any statute or legal document. The prosecutor frowned slightly, unsure what he meant. The defense attorney shifted in his seat. Whitman leaned forward, his voice lowering, not in volume but in tone, softer, fuller, more human. Justice is often loud. It is often surrounded by arguments, accusations, and voices fighting to be heard. But sometimes, justice whispers. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Some people blinked back tears. Others bowed their heads. Whitman's voice grew deeper, warmer. And when justice is silenced, whether by fear, by corruption, or by the weight of loss, it will always find its voice again. Emily lifted her head, her eyes shining. She knew those words were meant for her. Whitman continued, sometimes, that voice comes through the ones who cannot speak. A soft gasp escaped someone in the back row. Emily pressed her lips together tightly, tears rising, but she held herself steady. Whitman nodded gently, then turned to the pages before him. William Briggs, this court sentences you to... He spoke the legal terms, the years, the charges, the formal language that marked the end of a man's freedom. But even as Briggs was escorted away, no one looked at him. All eyes were on the small girl in the front. Because everyone knew the real verdict had already been delivered. Not by the judge, not by the law, but by the truth itself. When the sentencing ended and the courtroom prepared to adjourn, Whitman remained seated. He wasn't done. He cleared his throat. Before we close, I'd like to say something personal. He rarely stepped out of his judicial tone, but today was different. In all my years on the bench, I have witnessed tragedy, injustice, anger, sorrow. He paused, searching for the right words. But I have also witnessed bravery, loyalty, and love so powerful that it speaks louder than any testimony. Emily's fingers curled around Rex's collar. The judge's voice softened. "There was a dog," he said, "who carried the truth in silence, who protected the innocent, who gave everything so that justice could finally be heard." A quiet sob broke from someone in the gallery. Emily's chin trembled as she held the collar close to her heart. Whitman looked at her with warmth that felt almost paternal. "And there is a young girl," he continued, "whose courage reminded all of us that the greatest strength is sometimes found in the quietest souls." Emily's tears finally fell, but she didn't hide them. Whitman drew a breath, steady, deep, full of reverence. "Let the record show," he said, "that justice was not delivered by the loudest voice in this courtroom." He looked at the collar again. "But by loyalty beyond words." A hush swept the room. The weight of his words hung there. Beautiful, heavy, unforgettable. Whitman lifted the gavel one final time. "Court is adjourned." He struck it gently. Not a sound followed. No shuffling. No murmurs. Just silence. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was a sacred one. The kind that fills a church after a prayer. The kind that follows a goodbye no one is ready for. The kind that honors something pure. Emily stepped forward toward the water. Stand. Each step felt slow, tender, as if she were walking toward a memory rather than an object. She reached the platform and placed her hands on Rex's collar. Her thumbs traced his name. She pressed her forehead to it, eyes closed, breathing in as if the leather still held his scent. Whitman stood quietly behind her, giving her space. She whispered, barely audible but unmistakable, "Thank you." Her voice cracked, fragile but beautiful, the words trembling like a newborn bird stretching its wings for the first time after years of silence. Whitman closed his eyes for a moment. The entire courtroom felt it, that whisper, that release, that rebirth. Emily stepped back, lifting her head. Her face was tear-streaked, but she smiled. A small, faint, glowing smile. The kind of smile Rex had died to protect. She turned and walked down the aisle. Officers stepped aside instinctively, giving her a clear path. Some bowed their heads as she passed. Others placed their hands over their hearts. By the time she reached the doors, the room was no longer silent. It was breathing, softly, humbly, like a wounded heart beginning to heal. Whitman watched her go, pride swelling in his chest. He whispered to himself, "Justice found its voice." And as Emily stepped out into the sunlight, her small hand wrapped around her father's badge, and the other clutching Rex's collar, the world outside seemed brighter, not because the pain was gone, but because truth had finally been spoken, through the silence of a little girl and the loyalty of a dog who never needed words to be heard. Years passed, not quickly, not quietly, but in that slow, gentle way life moves when someone is learning to breathe again after everything has been taken and reshaped. The city changed. The courthouse changed. Even the badge numbers on the police roster changed. But Emily Moore, she grew. She grew in silence. She grew in strength. She grew into the space left by a father who died protecting her, and a dog who taught her that some voices don't need sound to be heard. It was early morning when the story of her future truly began. The soft kind of dawn where the world holds its breath just before waking. The sun peeked through curtains in a small apartment tucked above a quiet street. The furniture was modest, A worn couch, a shelf of old law books, a framed photo of her and her father in the backyard. And on the center table, a watch. His watch. The same one saved from the fire. Metal warped, face scratched, but still ticking. Stubborn, steady, almost defiant. Every second carried a heartbeat of memory. Emily stood over it now, no longer a child, but a young woman in her 20s. Her hair fell to her shoulders in loose waves. There was a quiet confidence in her eyes, the kind that comes only from surviving what might have broken someone else. She touched the watch gently, brushing her thumb over the engraving. Trust the silence. Her father's message. His legacy. Her compass. Behind her, the apartment door rattled. A soft bark followed. Emily turned, and a young German shepherd pup bounded inside, tripping slightly over his oversized paws. His fur was thick and glossy, ears too large for his head, tail swishing in an excited arc. "Easy, Scout," Emily said with a laugh. A real laugh, the kind she hadn't heard from herself in years. Scout slid to a stop and sat proudly, as if presenting himself for inspection. Emily knelt, cupping his small face in her hands. "Today is day 3. You ready for your next lesson?" Scout barked once, tail wagging so hard his whole body swayed. Emily smiled. Outside, morning traffic hummed. A church bell chimed. But inside this small apartment, the world shrank to just the two of them. Emily picked up a wooden dowel, her training stick. Not for punishment, for sound, for rhythm, for code. She sat on the floor. Scout watched her with laser focus. "You're smart," she murmured. "Just like he was. And like him, you're going to have a secret language." She tapped the floor lightly. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap. Scout's ears twitched. He tilted his head. Emily tapped again, slower. "Remember?" she whispered. "It means hello." Scout took a breath. And then, tap. Just one. Soft. A beginning. Emily's chest tightened. Rex had answered like that once, shyly, first learning the game. Her father had laughed so hard the neighbors leaned over the fence to watch. Emily blinked the memory away. "That's good," she whispered. "One tap at a time." She tapped again. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Tap. Scout studied the sound, then pounced on her knee, knocking her into laughter. "You little troublemaker," she chuckled. He wagged furiously. She leaned her forehead to his. "You're not him," she whispered. "You'll never replace him. But you'll walk with me, like he did. And we'll speak in silence together." Later that afternoon, she walked Scout to the park, the same one her father used to drive past. The grass swayed, the fountain sparkled, children chased pigeons. Scout tugged on the leash, circling back with excited curiosity. Emily knelt in the grass. "Let's try again," she said. She tapped. Tap, pause, tap, tap. The sequence that meant love. Scout lowered his head, studying it. Then, hesitantly, tap, tap. 2 quiet taps. Tears filled Emily's eyes. Warm ones, grateful ones. "You're listening," she whispered. "There was a dog before you," she said softly. a hero. Scout listened. He saved me. He saved everyone. And he spoke, like you're trying to, with taps, asking us to listen. She tapped again. Scout matched her rhythm, imperfect, but true. She hugged him tightly. You're carrying them both, she whispered. My dad and Rex. Sunlight broke through the clouds, warming her face. She felt them both, in that space between heartbeat and breath, the place where silence speaks. Hours later, she returned home. Scout curled at her feet. Emily picked up the watch. TR trust the silence. I do, she whispered. She moved to the small training mat. Scout followed. One last lesson. She tapped the pattern from the very first courtroom scene, the one that changed everything. Scout watched. Then slowly, his tail moved. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Emily froze. That's it, she whispered. You carried it forward. The camera, if this were a film, would pull back. Emily and the pup in a warm glow. The watch ticking. Soft. Steady. Proud. Scout tapped again. Tap. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap. The Morse code that once saved a life, exposed corruption, became Rex's last breath. A circle closed. A legacy reborn. Emily whispered, Hello? The room went quiet. Not empty. Not lonely, but full. Deeply, profoundly full of everything that mattered. The window glowed softly as night settled in. The world outside dimmed, fade to darkness. One final sound. Tap, a single gentle note in the quiet. Then, silence, as sometimes the strongest voices in our lives don't come from words at all. They come from the quiet presence of a loyal friend at our side. Stories like this remind us how deeply animals can weave themselves into our hearts. If you've ever looked into your dog's eyes and felt understood without saying a thing, you already know. And if you're hoping to build an even closer bond, there's a little resource I've been using. Nothing fancy, just something that helped me connect with my own dog. I'll leave it here, in case it speaks to you too. I'll leave it here, in case it speaks to you too. No pressure at all, just a friendly nudge from one dog lover to another.